Thanks, it's really a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me okay? I don't have to worry about this thing. It's kind of there. We're good? Okay. Recovery Speaks. What a lovely name. And I want to thank Lisa and the staff at Cedars for putting this together. It's really my pleasure to be here and to speak to so many people that I already know, others that I don't. And I want to thank Ryan for sharing his story. I know Ryan from other places and hadn't put Ryan together with Ryan that was going to be here, and that was lovely. And the only thing I thought about I thought a lot when he was sharing, it touched me deeply, but in the beginning I was thinking that we live in Saanich, a lot of the fire department is here, and I asked my husband if he turned the stove off, so I think he did. But Ryan, thank you for your story. Thank you for your story, and thank you for your service. The other thing, I was sitting there thinking, I don't know about you, but I have these weird flash memories once in a while. And I was sitting here thinking about Recovering Out Loud and some of the words that were up here before these slides came on. And I had this memory flash of when I was first speaking with a physician on the Sunshine Coast, just before I went into treatment back in 1987. I went to a treatment center called Pacifica that was at that time in New Westminster. And the deal was that my counselor had asked me if I could stay clean for 7 days before I went to treatment. And I actually did stay clean for 7 days, and then I used on the ferry going over there, but I had to go and see a physician the day before I left for treatment, and I had 7 days of not using. And I remember speaking to this doctor who said, how are things going for you? And I said, actually, they're going really good. If you would like me to go and speak to some people about getting clean, I'm available. And so I guess somehow even back then, there was this kind of prediction that I was going to do something like this in my life. Oddly enough, he didn't call me Anyway. I've been recovering out loud for a number of years now. A lot of my recovering out loud is done online, but I'm also really proud to be a founding member of the Victoria Recovery Day activity project. I know Sue Donaldson is here, and also Bill and Hillary Cleverly, and so and I know that there's some amazing people that have taken over that project, and we wish them very well. A lot of work goes into that, as we recall. Anyway, so this Speaking Out Loud, Recovering Out Loud is my service. It's how I give back to the community, not necessarily just the local community, but to the community of women in recovery or seeking recovery. I didn't intend for She Recovers to turn into what it's turned into. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I didn't even really know what Facebook was when I decided to call something She Recovers on Facebook. Anyway, this is Recovery Talks, and I'm not going to dwell too much on what life was like in addiction, but I do want to qualify for a few moments. I kind of was looking today, I wanted to just, when I start telling my story, and I said to Lisa, I don't actually tell my story of addiction much anymore. It's a lot of years ago, and when I go back there, for those of you who have been in active addiction, there's so much chaos that geographically I can't even figure out where I was, let alone try and talk about through the years where I was, and I get all caught up in things, so I try not to talk too much about what it was like. But I do want to say, and I really connected with what Ryan was talking about in his childhood, I didn't start using that early at all. I was born and raised in Montreal, and I was taken care of by my family in all the material ways that mattered, I thought. We had a pool, so I thought that was pretty important. We were okay with that. What I know is I know that my parents did the very best that they could. I know that, and I've learned in my adult life that some of the reasons why what they did wasn't quite what I needed. My mom had trauma in her life because her dad was a raging alcoholic and drug addict, and he was that way because he had been to World War II. So she wanted to give her family safety and just calmness in our family. That was kind of how she wanted to parent, right? Was to do the opposite of what she had endured and experienced. Unfortunately for my mom, she was very closed off emotionally, so there wasn't a lot of we were kind of taught to just kind of stay quiet. There were 4 kids in the family, and her job seemed to be to keep us quiet and not rile up my dad, who was just kind of a miserable guy during the week. He wasn't violent or anything else. There was just always this simmering kind of tension in our home, and I don't know if any of you can relate to that. Juxtaposed to that was on Friday and Saturday night, we had the biggest house and we had the pool. So in the summer especially, all of our relatives would come over and our house would turn into this wild, happy place with people drinking and drinking more. And and we would I just remember getting these little glass bowls of peanuts and thinking I was in heaven, or a little bowl of chips and a little cup of Pepsi, because we didn't get that a lot. And I think I started to relate to alcohol at that time as something that made people happier. I've since said that with my dad, who you couldn't even look at during the week without getting in trouble for something, you could actually, on Friday night at about 9 o'clock, you could kind of tease him a little bit about being bald. And you could on Saturday, you might be able to tease him about the way he danced if they were dancing in the living room. But God forbid you should tease him on Sunday afternoon, right? It was just there was such a difference. So I think that really affected me. As a child, I know that I was really craving affection, attention, and affirmation. I wanted affection, and I didn't come from an affectionate family. I wanted attention, and I felt quite invisible for most of my childhood. And I really was seeking affirmation that I was just okay, that I was a good person, that they liked me. I just kind of wanted to know that they liked me in my house. And I don't think that they did. My brothers in particular, my two older brothers, the way I got my attention was just to be the biggest squealer. They couldn't do anything without me ratting them out. So, they really didn't like me for the longest time. So how did I cope with the stress and the tension in a world where I felt invisible? Well, I just escaped into fantasy, in part through books, such as Ryan was talking about. I loved reading. I was an avid reader, but I also, with television, when television came along, I used to fantasize that I was like the 7th child in the Brady Bunch, and then you're dating yourself if you giggled at that and you know who that is, but, and then there was that period of time where I fantasized about being the child bride of David Cassidy in the Partridge Family, all these things, and of course none of those things came to be. The other thing I was really good at was school, and I think that's where I got my attention. And I'm not quite sure, but what we know as researchers, and when we look at children who have kind of experienced trauma or who have had a difficult time growing up, we know that just having one key adult in their world to take care of them and show them love and attention and respect can make all the difference in the world. And I remember I had a teacher in grade 6 who told me that I was a really smart girl and that I could go really far if I paid attention. I didn't pay attention for very long, but I remembered for the rest of until now, right? I remember Mr. Walsh saying that. So we left Montreal when I was about 12. We moved to Ontario for 2 years, and my dad's job, he was transferred, and then moved again out west when I was 15. And again, we know that moving kids can be really difficult at those ages, especially for girls. We're already very insecure. We're worried about whether we're pretty enough or whether people like us enough, or if we're going to say the right things, or how flat-chested we are, that type of thing. And so when we moved to Edmonton, I was 15, and I tried drugs for the first time. And for me, it was a downward spiral really quickly. The first time I drank, I blacked out, which was really insane, I think. And I've heard other people talk about, since I've been in recovery and I've listened to women, I remember one woman saying to me that she wanted to go to treatment, she needed to stop using, and I was asking her, well, what's going on with you? And she said, I blacked out. I know that I have to stop because I blacked out. What that told me was that we're all different, our bottoms are all different, and that's okay, right? The first time I really got inebriated, I blacked out, and it was definitely not anything that I thought I needed to worry about. So within 1 year, everything spiraled for me. I experienced my first overdose on pills and alcohol. I quit school halfway through grade 10. I was just a scared little girl. I really had no skills and no abilities. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Around the same time, my parents, whose marriage had actually always been kind of difficult, decided to separate. And although I think that they probably wanted to pay attention to me a little bit at that time, especially after the overdose, they just really didn't know what to do with me. So they didn't really do anything with me at that time. And a month after my 16th birthday, I ran away to the Yukon from Edmonton. At the time, my parents were really preoccupied with what was going on in their marriage, and I look back now and I realize, I actually ran away. I was kind of like, I'm running away to the Yukon now. You're never going to see me again. I hate you, and I'm going now. And they didn't do anything. And I look back now and I think, although it sounds kind of sad, it's really kind of funny. I think they just thought I moved. Like, I don't think they realized that I was like running away. And when your kid runs away, you're supposed to go get them, right? You know, it was like when I quit school, I got in trouble because I had a party and they found some knives in the budgie cage and they didn't know what it was about, but they were upset about it. And they threatened me with something like being grounded, and I said, well, you're not going to ground me or I'm going to quit school. And they, you know, thinking they're never going to let me quit school. And they said, well, you better get a job. So, you know, kind of a little bit of dysfunction in my family, right? So I quit school, but I didn't really want to, and I ran away to the Yukon, but I really thought I was going to be brought home. And then there I was, in the Yukon. White horse. 16 years old, no skills. And, you know, the next 4 years, from the time I was 16 to 20, was just a really insane period of time for me. I used every day, I think, for those 4 years. I used all sorts of drugs. I used drugs that I said I would never use. And things were getting progressively worse all along. I spent my 17th birthday in the hospital. I had alcohol poisoning. By the time I was 20, I had been hospitalized for another 3 overdoses, and I was always aware that there was a problem, that there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know what to do about it. Recovery wasn't even a word, I don't think, that was in the lexicon at that time. This is 1978, 79. I did try to quit or moderate at times, and never really making good choices even around that. And I remember I started working in the bars up there when I was 17. The drinking age was 19. And I remember knowing after that, getting so ill when I was 17 that I had to stop drinking, but I decided to switch to cough syrup at that time, which was really insane. But, you know, and I would drink cough syrup out of a brandy snifter while I was working so that people didn't know that I didn't want anyone to know that I wasn't drinking. So this is just some of the insanity of my using life, and I don't know that I was any worse or any better than anybody else. But when I look back now, I realize that I was just always that really scared little girl who didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I didn't know who to ask for help. Well, that was, during those years, there's a lot of what many women, young women in active addiction, we kind of end up doing things like, I was still seeking affection and looking for love in all the wrong places, and I was looking for attention and getting lots of it, but normally it wasn't kind of positive attention. And I was still looking for an affirmation that I was okay, but I knew it wasn't. So what happened for me was I found myself quite unexpectedly pregnant at 20, and I always say that without a doubt, my daughter Ashley, who's not here tonight because she doesn't like to hug, she has a baby girl. She's at home with her baby girl. But Ashley saved my life. I didn't get clean. I didn't even stop using during my pregnancy. But I did start thinking about changing my life. And so I call the time in my life between 20 and 27 as my harm reduction period, because I really, really did want to do better. I wanted to do better for myself. I didn't want to die. For all of those years, although I wasn't successful at quitting, I was always trying to stop using. I was always aware that I shouldn't be using, and I wasn't having a lot of fun using. I wasn't using as regularly. I became more of a binge user. I ended up in a really quite abusive relationship with my drug dealer. Something good comes out of everything. So out of that relationship came my daughter Taryn Strong, who's also the co-creator and my partner in She Recovers. Yeah, we like Taryn. She's also in recovery. That marriage was extremely abusive. There was a lot of cocaine-induced violence, just a lot of dysfunction. We moved from the Yukon to the Sunshine Coast at that time, and I often look back and refer to it as insanity with the view. That's kind of the way it was. My then husband ended up in a drug-induced psychosis in St. Paul's Hospital, and that was in about 1986. And we were finally introduced to the idea of recovery. The psychiatrist who first misdiagnosed him with schizophrenia, which was really scary. We were so relieved to find out he was just a drug addict. suggested to him that he really ought to give up everything, not just the cocaine, that he should. So we call it in our family. Anyway, they suggested that he give up everything, including pot, including alcohol, and he was not going to have anything to do with that. Let me just say that. But I became curious and started to kind of think about whether that was something maybe I should do. Again, I knew I had a problem, but I didn't want to cry uncle. I didn't see how I could actually give up anything. Anyway, we did stay married for a little longer, and when I was 27, I just turned 27 in May, and in July of that year, Ashley, my oldest daughter, saved my life again. And I don't want to cry, but I look back and I think about bottoms. And I think a lot about bottoms because in my work with women through She Recover, and I'm also a recovery coach, I'm seeing a lot more women who are coming to choose recovery, sobriety, a healthier way of life a lot earlier in the game because they understand that it's available to them. And I'm just so grateful that we're able to show them, that you don't have to, there's a saying, you don't have to drive the truck all the way to the dump before you stop. And so I really do believe very seriously in early intervention and in speaking to people so that they know that they can get off at any time. Anyway, there I was, 27 years old, and I had these two beautiful little children. One was 6 and one was 2. My marriage had been a mess from the beginning. He'd overdosed and he was really crabby about not being able to do his drugs anymore. And we didn't have the money from his drug dealing career, and things were kind of a mess, and yet still I was holding on to the idea that I could use and life was going to be okay somehow. Miraculously, I had this fantasy that, I don't know, maybe David Cassidy would still come and I'd ride off into the sunset with him. But so it was just a moment, and my bottom wasn't all those overdoses, and it wasn't being in a violent relationship, and it wasn't all the the self-loathing and the times that I ended up in situations that I had no idea how I got there, and I was furious with myself and hated myself for having landed in those places. The moment came with me lying on a couch in Seashelt at about 10 o'clock one morning, and my daughter Ashley was watching Sesame Street. Taryn was just a baby, and I don't know what she was doing. She was probably just crawling around playing with her toys. I was up with the kids because I knew enough that I had to get up with them, and I'm sure I'd fed them, but I was so deathly ill from musing for several days previously. And I was lying on the couch, and I couldn't move my head, and Taryn wanted something. She was thirsty. She wanted a bottle, and her bottles were in the fridge. And I asked Ashley to please get your sister a bottle. And at 6 years old, Ashley she'd had enough of the chaos. I think she was pissed off. She'd started kindergarten in grade 1, and I think she'd already been to 4 schools because we moved so frequently because our life was so chaotic. Anyway, she was not going to get that bottle for her sister. So I asked her again, and I asked her nicely, please just get your sister the bottle. And then Taryn started to cry, and then I was like, get the bottle for your sister, can't you see I'm sick? And she just walked right up to the couch and put her face right into mine, and she had this beautiful blonde hair, beautiful kid, and she just looked at my face and she was so angry, and she said, you know what, Mom, you make me sick. Still gets me, right here. And that was my bottom. That was my okay, all right, I give, uncle, what do I do? So I went and I met with the counselor who I had actually been seeing since my husband had overdosed and declared that he was not interested in recovery. I'd been seeing her off and on, quite mostly off. But I did call and I went to see her and, sat down and we just started talking all about my now ex-husband, and how he was doing and everything else. And she just said, you've been coming to see me for 6 months. I don't even remember what that guy looks like. I would really like to talk about your drug addiction. And again, it was just one of those moments when I said, yeah, okay, what do I need to do? She asked me to promise to not use and to go to treatment if I did use. So I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to use ever again. And if I do, sure, I'll go to treatment. And of course, within 2 weeks, I was back in her office for some reason, being honest with her and saying, I have to go to treatment. So I did. I went to treatment. Treatment saved my life. I did not know anything about addiction, other than I had it. I didn't know that people could actually, that there were other people that did this thing. you know, in that treatment center, I was exposed to and introduced to a 12-step program, and it was in New Westminster, and I don't remember what night it was. But I remember going into this meeting, and I was a little bit afraid because there were a lot of bikers there. And my ex-husband, my now ex-husband, had actually been, his life had been threatened by bikers around some drug dealings that he'd not handled very well. So I was a little bit afraid of this room full of people in black leather, and then they started hugging each other. Really confused, really confused. But you know, that was the beginning of my recovery in that treatment center, and I have not, and don't clap because the story doesn't end here, but I have not drank alcohol since July 21st, 1987. And that's because I smoked so much pot for the first 2 years. In 1989, May 1989, I finally decided that I would go back to treatment to get off the pot. Because I was seriously as addicted to it as I had been to the harder drugs. And I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. So I went back to another treatment center, and I haven't done that again now since 1989. So for the past 27 and a half years, going on 28 years, I have been clean and sober for all but 2 days, because I never just leave things as they are. I always have to do a little extra. So my story is that I was clean. I did go, and I really immersed myself in a 12-step program that I attribute my recovery to today. I did so many things that I'd wanted to do before. I went back to school. You know, I was a grade 10 dropout, and I went back to university. I became a good mom, you know, right, Darren?
Yes.
I became a mom who was affectionate and attentive and affirming. That's what I wanted. I wanted them to have what I knew I needed and didn't have. I went back to school. You know, I went back to school. I ended up becoming addicted to school, and I went for 13 years. And I graduated with a PhD in healthcare policy in 2005, at precisely the same moment that I ended up in the hospital and nearly died because a cancerous tumor perforated my colon. So I was, a week after I ended up in surgery, nearly dying from being septic from this tumor perforation, I defended my dissertation in the hospital, in the boardroom of the Dean of Medicine's private boardroom at the University of Alberta Hospital, in recovery all of this time. So, but sort of back up, what happened to me is what in 2000, my mom passed away from leukemia, and I had, in recovery, developed an intensely close relationship with my mom. I'd come to understand her and all of the reasons she was who she was and how that had affected me and who I was. And she was diagnosed with leukemia and died 16 months later, and it was really traumatic for me because I felt like I just kind of found her, just kind of figured her out, and she died. And in the immediate aftermath of her death, like hours within hours, I had taken conduct of the morphine and all of the pills because I was the person who was the responsible one, and I had been taking care of her through her cancer. And I was in recovery, so I would be fine. You know, my sister was not in recovery at the time. She is now. She has 12 years. But, and you know, I had been kind of drifting away because I'd become so addicted to school that I was removed from my recovery program. And for whatever reason, for 2 days, I took those drugs. You know, I took them as prescribed. Apparently it's still a relapse in some places. Maybe not so much in others, but it is still a relapse, and so I still do count my clean time as, you know, starting from that date, and so I will celebrate 17 years this May 11th. I'm pretty proud of that. So recovery just kind of gave me back everything. You know, the other thing I did was I listened to, in the first year of my recovery and in a 12-step program, I did everything that they told me to do except that one thing, which was don't get in a relationship for a year. And I understand that's pretty common. My observation has been that it's really common. But you know what, I did okay. Every other relationship in my life up until that point was the very worst relationship in my life that I could find. You know, the worst guy in the world, I found him. And so in that 12-step convention, marathon meeting in June 1989 when I had less than 6 weeks. I met my husband, Alan. He'd been clean since February, so he was like... But the neat part of the story, especially for you newcomers out here, new to recovery, is that we were friends from June the 6th to September 27th. Completely platonic relationship. In fact, in those many months, we spent time, telling each other how we were never going to be in a relationship ever again with anybody. And, like I always like to say that I probably disclosed way more to him thinking he was just going to be my best friend for the rest of my life than I would have if I'd known I was going to marry him. And then I always get to follow up that by saying that he's never actually used anything that I said against me, and he's never brought it up again, so that's okay. I know, so sweet. So going back to school, raising my kids, we bought a house. We were in Alberta, and our dream was to move here and to move somewhere where Alan could fish. Fish more, work less, and where I would stop going to school forever and work more. And as I just said, I ended up in 2005 kind of getting cancer. A week later, defending my dissertation. Alan had actually driven here the day I ended up in the hospital, so he was here in Victoria already when he had to come back because his wife was going to die, and then I didn't. And then we moved here like right away as soon as I found out that Alberta Healthcare would pay for my chemotherapy for the first 3 months, and BC Healthcare would take over and pay for the next 9 months. And when I came here, I happen to believe in higher power. That's just kind of part of who I am. And when I came here and I met with the oncologist at the BC Cancer Centre down by the Jubilee Hospital, he said, "So you moved here from Alberta?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "Wow, that was a smart move." I said, "I think so. It's really nice here. We love it here." And he said, "No." He said, BC and Ontario are the only places that have a protocol that's going to save your life. So I was part of a clinical trial, and I'm still here. It's quite a few years later, so I'm pretty happy about that. So what happened to me at that point, and I'm going to wrap up here pretty quickly, because here I was, we were living here, I had cancer, maybe I was going to die, maybe I wasn't, but it was so pretty, and we lived by the ocean, and we'd left our kids in Alberta so we could go out for dinner, and we didn't have 3 young adults because our stepson had also moved in with us, so it was always really expensive to go out for family dinner, and we were just in our glory. It was like honeymoon period for that year. And then I went to work teaching at the university. I started my consulting business, and I started teaching at the university. University, consulting business, and I was headhunted into government into an executive position, leading a research team. And all those things were great, and it would have been a really good thing if they had happened kind of serially, but they all happened at once. And I embraced them all because I thought, I'm really behind in my life. I was a drug addict till I was 29 years old. I went to school for 13 years, and I just had cancer. I'm so behind, I gotta catch up. And I started going really, really quickly. And the thing about addiction for me is that it manifests in different ways at different times in my life. And what happened to me was I became extremely addicted to work. And I don't know if there are many treatment programs out there for people with workaholism. But I can tell you that I was as sick at the end of that run that I was at any other time in my addiction. I started breaking down in meetings at work, blacking out when I was going home. I'd drive home and I'd pull into my driveway and I didn't remember getting there. I was so stressed out. I was hiding my work. I would go into the guest room with my laptop and I'd go underneath the blankets in case Alan got up for a pee. I didn't want him to know that I was working at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a very, very serious thing. So I hit the wall with that. I went to the doctor after breaking down in a meeting and blacking out on the way home, and I said I needed a note because I thought I needed a couple of days off. And she said I needed more, and I ended up being off for 4 months. And in that time, I started blogging and I was blogging about workaholism, and I was kind of being open to the world, as in the internet. I knew nobody was reading it, but it was like a journal online. And then I started to write about how workaholism was similar to my addiction, and then people started kind of relating to me, and things got really crazy. So in that 4 months, I blogged every day. And when I went back to work, I was smart enough to know that I couldn't go back to work and then blog for 4 hours a day. So I switched over to this little thing called Facebook. I decided I didn't want it to be about me, so my blog was called Recovering Dawn, and I called this little page She Recovers. And I thought all I have to do, all you really have to do if you want a successful Facebook page is share some pretty pictures, and share some resources, and share things from other people who have really big pages. Because then they like you, and they share you, and all their people come over anyway. I could do a whole thing on that, but... So the Facebook thing kind of took off, and I went back to work. Things were going really well, except that the economy was cratering, and in November of 2011, my research unit was dissolved. The government at the time didn't think research was all that necessary. Evidence, no, sorry, I won't go there. I should never go there. I'm going to descend into that. And I was really fortunate that they did it in November and not earlier that year, because earlier that year I thought that I was my job. I thought that everything that was about me was kind of my profession and my professional life. So I decided that I would focus on women in recovery, helping women in recovery, that was my passion, and that was what had kind of been sparked by this Facebook page and the other work that I was doing. My daughter at the time, who was a yoga teacher, had gone and taken some training in trauma-informed yoga, as well as yoga for recovery. We decided we would start doing these little retreat things, so we've been doing retreats. We've done 12 since then. And things are just kind of, I think if you go to the website, you can see what else we're up to. I won't bore you with all the details right now, but what I can tell you is that since 2011, in this period of time, I just went back to consulting, stopped teaching, like one job, and then now She Recovers as kind of a job, and I'm actually giving up my real job for the one that doesn't pay any money, which stresses my husband out to no end. But somehow, some way, I just want to continue to work with women in recovery, and I'll figure out what that looks like so that we do still have food on the table. I just want to say that, today, I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the room, in the world. I know so many people in this room, and I love so many of them, and I'm just so happy that you've all been here to hear, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the next speaker too. And I'll just close by saying that today, I give and receive more affection than any human deserves. I'm in love with literally thousands of women who have kind of joined our community, hundreds more who have been to our retreats, dozens who I've sponsored in a 12-step program, some who have wandered a little bit away, but I still love them and am always happy to see them. And as for attention, I really don't need it the same way as that I used to, but I'm grateful for it when I get the attention, if it allows me to shine a little bit of light on this thing called recovery. Because I think recovery is one of the coolest things going in the entire world. And I think that if we can tell more people that, they'll be a little less likely to ask for help and to ask if they too can be part of that really cool club called recovery. And I don't mean cool like elite. I mean, you know what? When you see somebody who's happy and you get to say, you ask them about what happened for them, I believe that the two most powerful words in the world other than I love you are me too. When you hear me too, I think that that's really powerful. So the best part about recovery for me is that I can now affirm that affirmation piece that was always missing through me. I can affirm for myself each and every day that I stay in recovery and live the best life that I can, that I'm pretty okay. I'm okay. I don't need you or anybody else to tell me. I know deep down, like with everything I am, that I'm okay. Some days I'm even like really, really more than okay. And once in a while I'm fabulous. And so these are some of the things that recovery has given me. And I'm grateful, and I wish them for all of you too. That's it.